Okay, so if you guys have your earbuds.
Miss Reardon,
Yes.
has your group gotten lunch?
Yes, this group has gotten lunch.
Okay. Mr. Patrick, are one of y'all, the teachers, going to introduce Mr. Patrick, or would you like for me to?
Oh, you could, if you, I don't really know much to talk about, so maybe you want to do it?
Okay. I might get a little heavy-handed with all the facts. This is Ian Patrick. Prior to starting Biloba, Mr. Patrick worked for some of the most prestigious firms in the Southeast, including Gant, I'm probably going to say it wrong, Huberman Architects, and LS3P. Ian manages the more technical aspects of projects, including budgets, deliverables, and schedules. Ian is the Think in Think design. Ian is a member of the American Institute of Architects, United States Green Building Council, Construction Professionals Network, and the Commercial Real Estate Developers Association. He has served on the A1A's Legislative Review Committee, was past co-chair of the USGBC Charlotte Board of Directors, and chair of the USBC's Membership and Outreach Committee. Ian spends a considerable amount of time volunteering in the local community. Most recently, he was deployed as a volunteer for the NCCER program in the wake of Hurricane Florence. He has also volunteered for CP&I, attending two-day town workshops for struggling rural towns. So I'm going to let him start.
Great, thank you for that. As she said, my name is Ian Patrick, and I'm an architect, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how we use math in architecture and why actually it's beautiful. So without further ado, I'm going to go through my slides here. I had an issue with my video, so I've actually got it pulled up separately. I couldn't get it to run. So I'm going to show you this video real quick. It's pretty short. Enjoy. So that was obviously a joke, and he didn't get it. But it's an interesting thing about models. So we have to present things to clients in various different ways, and that includes building models. And that could be, as some of you may have built model airplanes or model cars or things like that. We also present models to our clients in various ways, and one of them is to build actual physical models. Because obviously you can't show them a building at full scale, because that would be basically building the building. So you have to show them what your vision is for their building. And in order to do that, you have to be able to scale up and down your model depending on what size model you want to build. One of the ways that we do that is we actually have to figure out what scale we want to use. These are some actual drawings that came out of our office, and you can see this tag here tells you what scale you're looking at. And so the proportions are, as you can see here, a 1/4 inch equals a foot. And so for every 1/4 inch in real world, the drawing it equals a foot, so they can understand how big things are. And we use an architect scale to be able to show those things, and I've got one right here for you. So when we lay this on a drawing, we can say, okay, my scale is 1/4 inch equals a foot, so this is a quarter here. And we can lay it down on the drawing and say, okay, this wall is 100 feet long or 200 feet long, or this building is 100 feet tall. So that's one of the ways that we introduce scale so that we can communicate what we're trying to do for a client. Let me get to the next slide here. And there are many different measurements, imperial and metric, as I'm sure you're all aware of. In the United States, of course, we use feet and inches. And if you didn't know, it's kind of an interesting fact that the name foot and the actual size, the 12 inches, started out by about the size of someone's foot. Now, of course, that sounds ridiculous because everybody has different size feet, but that's sort of the way it started. Most of the rest of the world uses metrics, so centimeters, meters, and if you've studied kind of, base 10 measurement systems, everything's really easy because you can just multiply by 10 or 100 or 1,000 or divide by 10, 100 or 1,000. And sometimes we do some federal projects where they require us to use meters and centimeters, but most of the time we use feet and inches, and I'm sure you've been learning about that. I want to talk briefly about area and how we use it. So this is one of the buildings that we designed, and we have to figure out how many people are going to be in this building so that we can make sure that there are it's safe if something happens. So if you look around the school that you're in, you'll see exit signs above doors, and that's what this big arrow is showing. Is if a person was in this corner of the room, how far would they have to travel before they got to a safe exit? And we have to use area to figure out how many people might be in this space. So you can see that this shop area, length times width, is 750 square feet. And then the building codes require us to use some certain number, depending on the use of the space, and divide that to get how many people in the building. So there's 8 in this. In your classroom, for instance, they make us use a higher number. It's like divide by 20, so you can have more people in the classroom. But that's a way that we use area in projects. Get to my next slide. Another thing I want to point out, and if some of you are around town and see some brick buildings, this is something you may not know. We actually use sort of different kinds of dimensions on brick. And if you look at the corner of a brick building here, you'll see that that is actually a full brick, meaning you don't want to have to cut a brick when you get to the end of the building. So you really have to plan out your buildings based on the size of the material you're working with, and we call those dimensions, and it's actual versus modular. So this is a pretty standard brick, and they're 7 5/8 inch wide and 3 5/8 inch, long, 3 5/8 inch thick, and 2 1/4 inch high. And we have to use those dimensions to make sure that the building we design doesn't have a bunch of cut bricks in it, because if someone in the field has to cut 1,000 bricks, it's going to take them more time, and the building's going to cost you more money. So what we do, if I can advance the slide, what we do is we actually have a dimension that we can work to, because keep in mind, there's also a joint between the brick. When it's called mortar, but they basically glue them together when they're laying a building out. And you can see this on your classroom if you go look outside. If it was a good architect, they would have figured out, it's going to take this many bricks plus the joint width to have a really nice clean line where we didn't have to cut any bricks. So when you're at home, if you have brick on your house, or when you're out and about, check it out. You'll see if they had to cut bricks at the end, or if the architect really planned it out and they could have a full brick and then turn the corner and keep going. So you'll see that the modular dimension is actually 8 inches. So if you have a 7 5/8 inch brick plus 3/8 inch for a joint, you actually end up with a nice clean number, 8 inch. And so let's say you have a door opening. If you wanted to have a clean door opening where you didn't have any cut bricks, You might have a 24-inch door opening because 24 is divisible by 8. So you can use that 8-inch modular dimension to make sure you have a nice clean building. And then once you've figured that out, then you have to figure out how to tell how much this building is going to cost. And we use area in that way as well. So, how much does this wall cost? Well, you know how long the wall is, you know how tall the wall is, so you get a square footage number, in this case 2,340 square feet. Now, there are companies out there that publish how much a brick wall costs per square foot. In this case, it was $16.50. So you know that the wall is $38,000. And we do that for everything in the building. It may be number of toilets, number of doors, and we calculate all those up and we add them up and we say, here's how much your building is going to cost. And then, for contractors, it gets even more difficult. How many bricks am I going to have to order to build this building? You've really got to learn the basics of the mathematics so that when it gets to more complex situations, like how many bricks do I have here, you can properly estimate it and order the right amount of bricks. And then you usually add kind of 10% for waste or broken bricks or things like that. So let me get to some funner stuff, I think, on my next slide. Yes. So one of the great things that was discovered about nature was that proportion actually is embedded in nature. And that's one of the reasons that we find things beautiful. And it's one of the reasons why architects use proportion to their advantage, because if we live in nature and we understand why things are beautiful, a flower petal, there's some real math behind that. And if architects can use math to design their buildings, they can have a beautiful building, if that makes sense. This is a nautilus shell on the right. And it's actually in proportion to the golden section. I don't know if you've studied that or all, but that's a big buzzword in architecture. And the golden section is actually a proportion of 1 to 1.618. And it seems like a trivial number, but it's not. The drawing on the right was actually done by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's called the Vitruvian Man. And Leonardo da Vinci found out that even our own bodies are divided up into this what they call the golden section, this 1.618. And you can do this at home. You can take a tape measure, and if you compare the distance from your belly button to the top of your head, compared from your belly button to the bottoms of your feet, and you will get the proportion 1.618. It works for the joint in your finger to your knuckle. It works from the end of your hand to your elbow. It works from your nose to the top of your head. It works for almost anything you can come up with. And so that was a really profound thing. And architects started saying, if we find these proportions in nature, even in our own bodies, we can use that to start to design things. So that's that visual representation of the 1.618. You can see each square, this overall rectangle is in proportion to this rectangle, you'll get 1.618. And then if you do it again, this square to this smaller one, and this one to this one, and then they connect up the corners, and you get this beautiful spiral that you'll find in nature all over the place. You'll see it in a sunflower. You see the spiral there. You'll find it in many, many plants. This is an aloe plant. You'll even find it in the very large. This is an image captured by the Hubble Space Telescope. You can see there's spiral that, again, occurs at all scales in nature, very large down to the very small. This is a moth. You can see it in the eye pattern as well as the tongue that they use to stick in flower nectar. And so, again, architects started realizing this. If you look at the proportions of the Eiffel Tower, you'll get the same 1.618. And back when the Greeks and Romans were really going through a change in how they were designing buildings, they decided they could use proportions to design their buildings. So if you look at this drawing on the different types of columns they would use in buildings, some are really simple, some are really complicated, but you can see that this column, for instance, is the diameter of this column has to be 1/7 of the total column height. And that created a proportion for them that was beautiful. And so they could make beauty by using the math behind it. They started getting more and more sophisticated. You can see the red lines on this drawing showing how this building is divided up. So it's not just sort of artistic sketching and figuring out what looks good, although that is a part of architecture. You really have to proportion your buildings in a way that people are used to. You'll see the Pantheon here in Rome was done the same way and results in a really beautiful interior. And I hope you guys will study some of these things. It progressed. So as as architects got more and more sophisticated, they started looking at other proportions and other ways they could make things beautiful. This is the Exeter Library at Princeton University, I believe, or maybe Yale, and this was done by a man named Lou Kahn in the 60s, and he was a master of proportion. Simple geometric figures just to make things beautiful, and of course, the rough, hard concrete next to the wood also has its own beauty. This is a project in India by the same architect, and he loved these big geometric shapes, and you can see it is a beautiful building, even though it may not be to some people's taste, right? Everybody has different tastes. It does have a proportion and a scale that goes all the way back to nature and the way that our bodies are divided up as well. More specifically, here's an architect from Spain, Santiago Calatrava, who really takes into account the human body when designing his buildings. Here's on the left is a watercolor, and he does lots in these watercolor paintings. And then we'll bring that into his buildings. You can see it on the bottom right here. It resembles the eyeball, and it has the eyelid, and this building actually opens up, believe it or not. Here's another one of this is in Sweden, I believe, and it's called the Turning Torso. And he sort of, figured out how your body might move and tried to mimic that into a building. And so again, that relationship between ourselves and nature and buildings that we make is very important. Here's another one of his. This is the Milwaukee Art Museum, and it's a beautiful building, and he sort of based it around a bird in flight. This one moves as well, and I actually do have a video, so it's actually a time lapse, but it's really brief, but so you can see how, as we got more and more sophisticated and we were able to start using computers to help us design buildings, to do really complex math, to figure out how to make a building open like a bird's wing. And of course, this is right on the coast, so it sort of has that beautiful bird in flight thought about it. But, you got to learn the basics first so that you know how to tell your computer what you want it to do. And this building, if you have a chance to go see it, I highly recommend it. It opens a couple times a day, and they let you know when it's going to open. Let me go back to my presentation here. And by the way, while you're sitting there listening and enjoying your lunch, I will take a few questions at the end, so I don't want to jump that on you. So be thinking about some questions you may have so you can ask them at the end. I'd love to take more questions. Advance the slide here. That was the video that wasn't working so great for me. Here's another, this is actually an Arab architect. She's no longer living, but her name was Zaha Hadid. And she started doing really complex geometry, but also based on proportion. And remember when I was telling you how to estimate a brick wall, think about how you would estimate the cost of this building, or how many panels you needed, or which panels are the same size. You know, we have computers that will help us now, but we still have to have that artistry and figure out what is good in proportion. And then we can use our computers to help us construct them and tell them how much it's going to cost. This is actually one of our buildings that we did. It's actually inside a building inside of a building. And the purpose of this building was a recording studio for a local college in Greensboro, UNCG. And we wanted to do an interesting paint scheme because we knew we didn't have a lot of money. It was a very low budget project, but you know, we have to paint the wall anyway. So is there something interesting that we can do? So if you look on the left here, this is actually a sound wave. And up top is a visual representation of the sound wave. So if you think about a wave that in water, if you drop two stones and how those might interact, you get this interesting line pattern. And we said, well, we can use that pattern and sort of project it onto the wall and get an interesting paint scheme that we didn't just come up with out of nowhere. You know, we used the mathematics and we used the use of the building, which of course is a recording studio, so sound is very important, to actually help us design a building where we didn't have to really, it's a weird way to say it, we didn't have to be that creative, we just had to have the idea, and then we could let the math and the nature tell us how to lay it out. This was another one of our little projects. It was actually a bus shelter, and you know, it's what happens if you take a curve on the ground and connect straight lines up to a straight line above, and what kind of interesting pattern might you get. And of course the curves and the sizes were all based on proportion, which is why we show the people here kind of in a dark silhouette. So again, going back to how the mathematics, the proportion, the scale, all can inform a design and a beautiful building. I really encourage you to start looking around at the buildings that you walk in, your schools, courthouses that you visit, you know, hotels, things like that, and try to think about how the proportion makes it look beautiful. And then every once in a while, you'll find a really bad building and see if you can talk to yourself about why that just looks weird to you. Is something off with the proportion? Are the windows too small for the building? Are the windows too big for the building? So yeah, I really encourage you to think about how the math actually, and the beauty of math and nature actually shows you, can help you design in things. So briefly, before I take any questions, I just wanted to say that, you know, I got into architecture by accident. I always built things when I was a kid and made things and worked with my hands, but I was also really good at math and science. And I actually went to visit a couple colleges, and my dad and I went together, and we got stuck in traffic and we missed the campus tour. Fortunately for us, we just decided to walk around a couple of the buildings and see what we could find. And we wandered into the architecture building, and I decided to put in an application. I only had a week to do it. So I put the application in, I got accepted, and then I had the most wonderful teacher, my very first class in college. And he was just one of the most brilliant people you could ever meet. And he could tell you why pencils got invented. He could tell you anything you wanted to know. And he had that double sort of artistic plus mathematic, and how nature and beauty comes together. And I was hooked. So for those of you that have really great teachers, make sure you thank them. Because they can make the difference in somebody's life. They certainly did in mine. I'd be happy to take any questions. I'd love questions. Please, no matter what the question is, I'd love to take them and answer them.
I don't know. I don't have any hands up yet.
You can do it, guys. You just had lunch.
Does anybody have any questions? That's good. Do you have a question?
No, I'm sorry. I was pulling up the kids' names and I raised my hand by accident.
Well,
No, it was great. It was really cool to look at all that architecture. Amazing.
I know. Oh my gosh, those buildings are so amazing. And when I taught seventh grade, we did the spiral like that. I would have my kids draw that.
Mm.
And we talk about the golden ratio a lot in seventh grade. This is sixth grade, but I might go ahead and just kind of give them a preview now since we talked about this.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You know, you can take a tape measure and start measuring your arm and your elbow, and you know, do it on a calculator or on paper, and you'll keep getting this 1.618. It's just an incredible number
Yes, and you're right. It appears everywhere.
everywhere.
So it's really interesting. Those buildings are just amazing that you showed. And so
Yeah, and we're just getting, you know, it's just going to get more and more sophisticated the more we're able to use computers, but you've got to have that base of math so you sort of understand it. And once you sort of train yourself to see that proportion, you know, you can draw it. You know, at this point, we're even moving from making models like that video I showed you. You know, we're now using these virtual reality goggles.
oh wow.
Where we design our projects on a computer and we can actually project into these virtual reality goggles, and our clients can go walk around inside of our buildings. But you know, that's just a testament to the long road of mathematics that people have, you know, stood on the shoulders of giants and keep progressing and keep progressing, and computers are only going to make it more beautiful, I think.
Well, I found it very interesting, even just about the bricks. And, you know, I never even thought about the fact that you would have to have the measurements of the building fit the bricks so that you didn't have to cut them. Like, I thought that was interesting, even. So, thank you very much. This was really a good presentation. And I think it really helps with the proportions and the ratios.
I agree. You're a great presenter. I mean, this was quite fascinating.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to come back anytime, and maybe you have a few budding architects or engineers in your class there.
I bet we just might.
I know. I hope so.
Especially
Yes, thank you.
if you're good at math and you're also an artistic person, that'd be a great career for you.
Well, it'd fit right in with our STEM program too. So yes,
Absolutely.
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 Well, I mean, to have a building that can flap its wings, there's like, that just goes to show there's like no limit to what you could create.
That
Yeah.
is the truth.
So, yeah, we appreciate it so much.
No, it was my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
We'll
You
let
have-
you know if we need anything else, because I think seventh grade would really enjoy this as well. So
Oh, absolutely.
we'll pass it on to them.
All right. That sounds great.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
That's
all
very
very
good.
much.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.